Stanford University.
Welcome to Stanford Medicine's 10th Annual Contemplation by Design Summit. I'm Dr. Tia Rich, Director of Contemplation by Design. It is my honor to introduce Elysabeth Williamson, with whom I'll be in conversation about the topic, the healing power of embodied connection with oneself and with other people. Elysabeth Williamson has been a teacher of yoga and transformation for over 35 years. She is the author of The Pleasures and Principles of Partner Yoga and is internationally recognized as the foremost presenter of partner yoga practices. As founder of Principle-Based Partner Yoga, a visionary art that expands the traditional practice of yoga into the realm of relationship, Elysabeth has trained teachers around the world. She presents international workshops and retreats and is known for facilitating a quality of space that leads to life-changing experience. In this time of accelerated change, Elysabeth sees the ancient science of yoga combined with practical education in relational and emotional resiliency as important skills for resolving the challenges we face. Elysabeth is currently working on her second book, entitled Becoming Fully Human, How Learning to Feel Saved My Life. Welcome. Join me in warmly welcoming Elysabeth. I'm going to invite Elysabeth to answer questions as a way to begin our conversation. And I'll start with the question of, what was your initial inspiration to develop partner yoga?
Hi, Tia, and thank you for inviting me. Well, I began actually doing yoga all my life. Even as a child, like a lot of children, I would naturally go into these yoga positions that I didn't know were yoga postures until my teenage years. And then I began actively studying. And when I was studying, yoga was not the phenomena that it is today. And I realized that, like a lot of things in the West, yoga was becoming a competitive sport, which is kind of the opposite of what it's known for stilling the mind and softening the ego and connecting our spirit with our humanity. So it was from that and just a natural draw towards a more feminine approach to yoga that it organically developed. At some point in my study of yoga, I saw an image of a woman, and she was squatting, drawing sacred art on the ground while having an infant at her breast. And for me, that just represented, that to me was the embodiment of partner yoga, that she was simultaneously connected to herself, another, the earth, and the divine through her creative expression. And up until then, I hadn't really seen any images that struck me so profoundly in terms of yoga. Most of the time we saw men in samadhi, looked like they hadn't eaten in 40 days, and they had transcended the physical body. And so I was just naturally drawn to develop something that was relational, because personally, that was where I was most challenged. And when I looked around at the world, it seemed like relationships were where most people were challenged. And I guess another point I can make right in that context is that we get hurt in relationship, and I also feel we heal in relationship. So And then just organically, I remember when my son was a very small toddler and I would be doing my yoga practice and he would want to participate. So I would be in a forward bend and I would just ask him to sit on my back and count to 10. And he loved it. And it was just natural and fun and embodied. And he was actually my first partner in developing partner yoga.
He was your co-collaborator. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And as you began to recognize the power of partner yoga, how did you begin to formulate the principles which are now part of your, well thought through system of partner yoga?
Yeah, I think the principles, the name I titled my book, which was quite, like a 7 to 10 year undertaking because I was developing these practices, or I should say they were just kind of being developed through me and with a close friend and student who we worked together to develop these. And I realized that what they were doing was calling forth these human qualities. And so instead of just feeling the posture as, maybe comforting or expansive or any of those kind of physical qualities, I realized we were also really practicing and recognizing the quality of trust, the quality of open-heartedness, compassion. We were working with intimacy. Of course, we were working with the primary principle of yoga, which is union, the transcendence of duality. So it just seemed natural that these practices had much more depth and meaning when they could be incorporated with these universal human attributes that we all have.
Do you feel that it is essential for people to know the principles before they begin a partner yoga experience?
I think it's helpful because it really brings the practice to life. And in the beginning of each chapter, I've written an essay, kind of like a poetic prose, on the particular principle, and that they're designed to be read to inspire the practice. And they can also be used as intention. So one day you might want to really focus your practice on how can I cultivate trust in relationship, or how can I feel more balance between self and other. And that's one of the great benefits of the practice. I think we all have challenges in power dynamics. I think that comes forward more with couples, but just the idea of I'm either focused on you or disconnected. So this is a practice for staying deeply rooted in ourselves while being open and connected to another.
Mm-hmm.
And the embodiment component of that really supports us to integrate it more than conceptually.
Thank you. Is it ever done with more than 2 people?
Yes, thank you for asking that question, because people just have such an assumption partner yoga is for couples. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful for couples. But I have my book right here, and you can see I put 3 people on the cover. This image symbolizes just the beauty of embodied form, connected embodied form. But it's the Trinity also, body, mind, spirit. But it also shows us that it's a relational form of yoga, and we're all in relationship constantly. It's the interconnectedness of life. And yeah, so parents and children, for a number of years, I taught mother-daughter partner yoga at Kripalu with my daughter. And it's just very powerful, because when children are very young, there's a lot of physical connection and expression of love. And as we get older, that tends to diminish. And yet, however old we are, human touch is so important. And so it's just lovely, especially because we can relate to each other more soul to soul versus I'm the mother, you're the daughter. And I've also taught with my son, and I'm grateful that he's been open to it, because, as a grown man, that he can, not only show up for a practice like that, but he often speaks to how important and how touch is his love language.
Would you like to say more about touch?
Yes, that's one of the core principles. And we speak a lot about quality touch. And maybe we could just do a little practice with ourselves right now with touch.
Let's do that.
So we begin with just bringing our hands together and creating some heat and energy between the palms.
And everyone is welcome to join in as we.
Yes, please do. Please do. And one of the things I like to point out is the relationship between the hands and the arms and the heart center, that the arms and hands are literally tools of the heart, instruments of the heart. So once we get a little heat and energy in the hands, we can begin to feel this field of energy between the hands. And I remember doing this for the first time when I was 20. And it was just a simple exercise for helping me recognize we appear as solid form, but science now shows us we are energy fields. So we generate this, and we generate it out of the heart. We feel how we are all healers. That's not just for the chosen few. And it is something we can cultivate. So we can take that energy, and I love to rest it up on the thymus. Yeah, it's just such a nourishing spot to feel. So maybe we can just take a moment and take some deep breaths into that endocrine gland. Nice. And how did that feel for you, Tia?
Very nourishing, very peaceful, very kind.
And calming.
Calming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a way we can connect first with ourselves, which often the question of, is partner yoga a substitute for individual practice, comes up. And I say absolutely not. It's just like in the rest of our lives, we need solitary time and we need connection. And, sometimes our life is oriented towards one or the other, and we need both. And it's the same with yoga practice. I think that when we practice partner yoga, we feel a quality of expansion on every level. Our minds open. Wow, that was a new experience. Our bodies can expand much deeper than they can on their own. And then the heart quality of connection. So we have this expansion, and then we go back into our individual practice from a more expanded place, and then we deepen that. And we cultivate that in our individual practice, so we have something to bring back to our partner practice.
So there's a partnership between the individual practice and the partner practice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In terms of you noting and acknowledging that we're all in relationships, would you say more about what you've observed in your own life and in the lives of your students, in terms of what the ripple effect is to relationships beyond perhaps just the individual you did partner yoga with?
Yes, thank you for that. I think when people, it can be challenging to get people into the initial experience, just because we're not used to or conditioned to be intimate with people that are strangers, which brings us back to the very first offering in the summit, the see no stranger, and the manifesto of revolutionary love. I was so identifying with what she was speaking to. And partner yoga is a tool for seeing no stranger. Often people have the most profound experiences working with someone they don't know, because there's no projection, there's no story. It's just completely open to the experience. And then they can go back in their lives, and I hear this from many people, that just having the experience of partner yoga, something that's quite unique for most people, they go into their lives with that experience of our sameness, and that it is safe to be open. And sometimes with all the challenges that we are facing in our world, it's easy to feel fearful and defended, and to have an experience of knowing that your openness really does make an impact, can really help us feel more empowered. And I think I went off the topic of the question a little bit.
No, you answered it very richly, and it actually leads me to the title of your forthcoming book. And you titled it in an inspiring way, Becoming Fully Human, How Learning to Feel Saved My Life.
Yes.
If you wish to speak to the lived experience that helped to form that title, and how partner yoga helped you to come to a place where you're writing this book.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have always been a deeply emotional being, sensitive emotionally, and it's taken me many years to receive the gift of that, versus in a world that places more value on intellectual achievement than emotional resiliency and expression. It's taken me quite a while, and partner yoga is such a powerful tool for showing us that it's safe to feel. And not only is it safe to feel, feeling is how we experience what we all want, which is to feel happy, to feel calm, to feel at peace, to feel joy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's been many times in classes and workshops and trainings where people, especially with inverted postures, people will, their whole world is literally turned upside down, and that just breaks something open, and they're able to really feel themselves. And for me, learning that how to work with my feelings and know that I have feelings, but I'm not the feelings. Even in our language, we say, I am angry, I am afraid, versus I feel. So I've come to really appreciate and respect my feeling nature. It's something that I'm still in process with, but ultimately it's through my feeling nature that I'm able to integrate my human, wounded, conditioned past with this wisdom nature that I am grateful to be in relationship with, and that I've felt my whole life, but they've been disconnected. And it's through feeling and really honoring and becoming more skillful in allowing and accepting the feelings without identifying with them.
Thank you. Coming to the practice of partner yoga, is there a tempo that you would say is happening? And what I mean by that is that there may be specific positions that people enter into in their bodies, and then there may be time to just experience the feeling. Could you say a little bit more about the rhythm? Because we all know now that yoga has a great variety of ways it's being shared, and some people move very quickly in very hot rooms, and there may be music playing, and there are a lot of different tempos and atmospheres in which yoga is still the word that's used to describe what's happening. In the partner yoga practice, what is the tempo and atmosphere?
Well, there is a particular format that I teach, and the way that works is we begin in a circle. And even when I began teaching individual yoga, I just intuitively sat in a circle because that just felt more based in equality and mutuality versus me being the teacher, the one that knows. And I love the definition, the original definition of the word educate, which comes from educar, which means to call forth. So a lot of partner yoga is about calling forth our intuitive knowing and our embodied knowing. So we'll sit in a circle. I'll have everyone speak, even if it's only a few words, if they've had experience with partner yoga or not. Because I feel like once everyone uses their voice, there's a level of commitment and participation that happens. And then I will often do a demonstration of a partner yoga flow set to music, which is often very emotionally impactful for people, just witnessing the depth of trust and connection and intimacy and beauty. So that's kind of like a dance that happens, not just to inspire the people. And what happens with that is I see how it's like, I want to experience that. I want to open with that. And then we'll go into what I think of as the foundation of partner yoga, and that's back-to-back sacrum connection, which we will be doing a few times over the next couple of days. We'll be doing it in the posture practice we'll do tomorrow. as well as on Sunday, the meditation will be based on that. It's such a powerful practice, and especially coming spine to spine, which is like coming essence to essence. It's very transpersonal. So it's quite interesting. It almost doesn't matter. You just get a sense of this is another human who has my back, literally. And then we'll do a warm-up massage just to get people, like a standing one that's very structured. I think because the practice is asking and inviting people to really show up with vulnerability, that the structure needs to be very clear about how we touch, when we touch, all those things, so people feel safe. And at the same time, we don't have to be super precious about it. It's just, we're human. We're learning to play with form and energy, which is what the practice, a lot of it is about. And then we'll do some mirrored postures. We'll do some postures where two different forms, but both are mutual. So people are mutually receiving benefit. That's one of the things I like to speak to, is that it's really balancing this idea of, oh, now I'm giving and now I'm receiving. So there really is in so many ways, a transcendence of duality, which is the essence, the root principle of yoga. That there's this feeling of, when I'm really present, I'm giving and receiving. So I think as adults, we tend to feel like, oh, if I don't do this right, then you get, you feel like you should be doing it right the first time. So I really invite beginner's mind. I really invite people to just be more playful with it, because the more relaxed we are, the more energy we can give and receive. So we'll do that. And then we will, depending, a workshop is minimally 2 hours, just because setting the context for people to relax and open with each other. And everybody comments how quickly the time goes in partner yoga practice. It's really quite a thing. So, and then we will do some sort of group, we'll at some point do an active listening practice, and we'll do that tomorrow in the practice, where we get to share, like, how did that feel? What came up for you? Because it's such a unique experience. And we also get to practice listening. And listening is something that we develop our whole life, right? And it's such a gift to feel really listened to. And so, so there'll be some form of active listening, maybe with a partner or in a circle. And we'll do a shavasana, connected shavasana, either as a group connected or with our partner. And then, yeah, so people will, in a very short time, have a pretty deep experience.
Thank you for really animating what lies ahead for us tomorrow, and giving us an understanding of, as I said, the atmosphere, the tempo, the tone. That was very clarifying and, as I said, animating. You had shown the beautiful cover of your book. Could you speak a little bit more about what we're actually seeing in that geometric form, and any other forms and images from the book you may like to share?
Yes, I had this image, which has gone around the world quite many times, and so many of these postures, this is in the last chapter of the book, where it demonstrates how any of these postures can be done by two people or more. Not all of them work in that way, but I have always been struck by the geometry of the body. Like, you know, the image of Leonardo's man comes to mind. And in my individual practice, I feel it. I feel how when I'm sitting on the strongest foundation, the triangle shape. And then when we come together, like this is an image that the book just opened to. And so when you look at these are all photographs that have been appear as illustrations. They've been photoshopped. But when you look at that, you can look at it as two separate people. And you can also look at it as what is the third, right? You can see the third image and this third shape being created.
Just the pure geometry and the beauty of it.
Yes. So I just think that the human body is amazingly beautiful. And as I said back in the beginning, you know, in the introduction to my book, I spoke about how, for me, my yoga practice has actually been a sensual experience, not an ascetic experience. And I think partner yoga is just an extension of that. And if a lot of what we've been conditioned with is no pain, no gain, even in a more masculine approach to yoga. And I feel like if it's something that we enjoy, then I have certainly been much more drawn to come back to it because it does feel pleasurable. It does feel nourishing.
Thank you. And in the partner workshops, it sounds like people who don't know one another might be actually doing a series of positions together. What is your experience of asymmetry in the body size or you know, flexibility, and how that plays out?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I think it doesn't matter. There's just really a couple poses that it really does, you know, it will only work in one direction with the larger person doing a particular posture. And it's the more that you can relax, the more we see that it's not about the pose. It is about the connection and the relaxation and the presence of another to help us relax. And so there is certain postures that only work with people that are, you know, more similar sizes. But for the most part, it's amazing how it doesn't work. And so I can show another image here of just how that when the body is aligned, that there's just ease. So you can see with the hips and legs that there's just an alignment there. And as I grow older, I can still do all these physical things, but the connection is what is really of deeper interest to me. And so I've been focused on developing more practices about connection and about sharing silence. So one of the practices that I developed for couples is called choosing connection over conflict. And, in the introduction to the practice, I speak about how when we're triggered, it's just so easy to stay stuck in our story and our thoughts and our emotions, our anger, or fear, whatever comes up. And so this practice is a practice of making the choice and inviting our partner to simply come, sitting back to back, making that sacrum connection and calming the nervous system in silence, and just really reflecting and getting to that place where you're willing to do the practice. To me, is the greatest, the most challenging part. Once you're there, it's like you've chosen connection versus your story and wanting to be right. And then after you do the practice, then you just turn and with an intention to see the situation differently. And then you turn and face each other and just agree to come back and speak about it at a later time. And it's a really simple and profound practice.
Both descriptions, that of the inclusivity of the quality or the intention for connection, and that is more dominant than any sense of specific form that the bodies may take, and that is so welcoming to offer the experiences that we all long for, of trust and being seen and supported and soothed and safe. And then how you've carried that into a very specific application of when people feel not seen and not supported and not safe, that they can connect at their sacrum. That's very memorable and inspiring, and it really is the invitation that you're offering to us.
Yes, and bringing the body into it. In the instructions for that practice, I say if there's, for whatever reason, the sacrum connection isn't available, just to sit side by side, touching hands, just to have that physical connection. Because when we're angry or hurt, that's the last thing we want to do. Like in our minds, right? We want to do other things. So just having that willingness to make that connection. And we hear a lot about how important connection is, but it's not, to me, I don't see a whole lot of opportunities with tools for connection.
Embodied connection.
Yes, embodied.
Thank you.
I wanted to share one of my favorite stories from what is possible through the practice. So one of my favorite practices that I present, that's in the book, it's a practice called surrendering into life and death. And most yoga, anyone who's practiced yoga has done shavasana at the end of class, which is known as a deep relaxation, as an integration pose. But the deeper practice of shavasana is really practicing our death, practicing that ultimate letting go. And so in this particular practice, surrendering into life and death, we get to experience both the role of guardian, helping somebody make that transition, just sitting in silent meditation while the person's in a deep, and I guide them through a deep release and into shavasana. And then we'll switch roles. And my preference, I teach this in 2-hour format, but my preference is to teach it over a weekend, which I have one coming up. And throughout that weekend, there was this woman that came to one of the weekends, and she was about 75 at the time. She had just lost her husband of 50 years. And very openly and honestly, she shared in the opening circle that she was at the weekend to discover whether she wanted to continue living without her partner. And, I think we were all just so touched by her openness. And we went through the weekend doing various practices leading up to the Shavasana practice. And then on Sunday morning, we do like a celebratory rebirth practice, which includes inversions, partner inversion. So I was demonstrating this inversion, and she just looked and was like, no way, there's no way I can do that. And because I've seen so many people able to do things that they don't think they can do over and over. And that's one of the beauties of this practice, is if it's taught, if a particular practice that might look like that practice I showed you of the back bend, that might look like there's no way I could do either of those. If it's taught in a slow and safe, incremental way, that most everyone can do almost everything in the book. So after I demonstrated, I walked her through this practice, and we did it step by step, and she ended up in this inverted flying pose, and she came down with tears streaming down her face saying, I want to live. I want to live. And then she emailed me a couple of years ago, and this was like 7 or 8 years after her experience, just to tell me how deeply that impacted her, and that how rich her life has been.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and also emphasizing the quality of slow, incremental, supported, safe. In today's accelerated world, it feels that those principles, as I already spoke to, that tempo is as important as anything else that you're sharing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just taking the time to slow down and communicate. That's one of the things we'll speak about tomorrow, that as we're communicating, we want to communicate with kindness, with our words and with our tone. And yeah, just to move slowly and to know there's no goal. Just the practice itself is the goal. And that each step of the practice, like this particular practice that I was just speaking of, every step along the way brings value and expansion. And she happened to go into the fullest expression of the pose. But any step along the way. I think our language is very much oriented in duality, right, wrong, higher, lower, good, bad. And when I made a video series, I showed the different qualities or different expressions of a practice, and I called them foundational and expanded. So the foundations we all continually need to come back to. The simplest things.
And in that spirit of foundation and expanded, you've referenced workshops. How does partner yoga fit into non-workshop based moments in our lives?
Yeah. Well, like anything that is not a typical part of our lives, I think it really needs to be quite intentional initially. And so maybe you would come to a workshop and have a big, profound opening and decide, well, I want to take a weekend workshop. And then you might want to do a training, or you could just simply experience the sacrum connection. I tell people all the time that if that's all you come away with, then it can really make an impact in your life. And for me, the experience of partner yoga is something that can change us, so that when we have this experience, something shifts in us where we come back to our life, and even without a direct practice, we might, people tell me all the time they have trouble finding someone to practice with. But even if you can do it with a tree, you can do it with elementally, with bare feet on the earth. That's a form of partner yoga. So it's really a perspective of a recognition of how can I be deeply connected to myself and open to relating with the natural world, with another, with a stranger. So I personally am still challenged by that question that you just asked, with how do we bring it into the world? The reason why I titled my style of partner yoga principle based was how I developed it, but it was also, I wanted to distinguish it from all the other forms of partner yoga that were going to be out in the world. And that's just not the case. I think some people may have heard of acro yoga, which really, had a lot of enthusiastic followers. It's much more about the acrobatic aspects of yoga. And I teach a lot of what they also teach, but I'm oriented much more towards the connection and the grounding and really creating a mutuality. But honestly, there has not been very many people that have developed the practice or that are out teaching the practice. There'll be components of it. And so I think that it's just still really finding its way in the world. And I just have worked to be at peace with that and accept that it is what it is. And every time I think, well, maybe it's just I need to move on, but I just...
No, what I'm hearing you beautifully illuminate is that the principles are what can be expressed either in a workshop or in a partner yoga principled practice with the earth and with the life forms around us and available to us. And that is really how what you've formulated has expression in any moment and in every moment. And that, what I'm hearing you say is that as I, sit here with this orchid next to me and feel my sacrum pressed against the chair and feel the orchid next to my shoulder and face, that I'm in partnership with something that's alive. And that is a very broadening invitation to connection and to the qualities that are outlined in the principles.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you for articulating that so beautifully. Yeah, and that is exactly it. That's it. And just having that experience, obviously coming back to it and committing to any practice is going to deepen that. but just opening our mind to that recognition is what it's about. And it's so nourishing. You know, I'm in my 60s now, and I feel like my physical practice continues to expand. It's different. It's not as fiery as it was back, you know, in my 30s or 40s, but it's a practice that really helps us feel. I actually wrote down a quote here from the grounding chapter that I wanted to share. It says, grounding is our capacity to fully inhabit our physical body, allowing the intelligence of each cell to come to its full health and radiance. Awareness can then come through the entire being rather than the intellect alone. Grounded embodiment enables our life force to flow freely, uninhibited and unobstructed. Partner yoga is a valuable tool for finding our way to this profound state of being and the peace inherent in it. To be grounded is to feel held by life.
That's a beautiful quote, and thank you for sharing it. I thank you for being in conversation with me about partner yoga, and we very much look forward to your interactive workshop tomorrow, and then your guided practice of the sacrum practice on Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tia. It's been my pleasure.